Hey there. Welcome back to another episode of CUPE Cast. Are you hoping to learn more about unions and progressive movements? Then you're in the right spot. My name is Brianna Plummer. I use she, her pronouns. We're the only podcast of our kind, combining union info, pop culture, and more, kicking ass for the working class, one podcast at a time. Whether you're a member of CUPE, in a union, wish you were in a union, or just found us while browsing, you are definitely in the right place. To hear more episodes, look for the CUPE Cast anywhere that you stream or download podcasts. And for feedback for future episodes or give us some ideas, don't forget you can email us at cupecast@cupe.on.ca. That's CUPECAST@cupe.on.ca.
And I'm Mohammed Alqasem. On today's episode, we sit down with CUPE Locals 49, 48, and Local 79, and we discuss how they're engaging their members and the public as they head back to the bargaining table with their employer, the City of Toronto. Stay tuned because today's episode is going to be a really fun one. You're listening to CUPE Cast episode 41, Back to the Bargaining Table.
It's been a while since we recorded our last episode, but I'm glad that we are back. Happy New Year to all our listeners. I hope 2025 has been treating you well so far. But before we proceed on with this episode, if you listen to the introduction, then you should have heard a new voice. That's right. I am back and I'm joined with a new co-host. Enough for me for a minute. It's time that the new co-host introduce himself. And just a hint to our listeners, this individual is no stranger to CUPE Cast. Am I right, Mo?
Oh, long-time fan, long-time listener. So, yeah, my name is Mohammed Alqasem. Um, I'm currently the fourth vice president at the CUPE Ontario Executive Board. I've had 3 terms as the president of Local 1281, spent a couple of terms as the chair of the Young Workers Committee, and alongside me, of course, was my good friend Brianna.
Whoop, whoop.
Um, and yeah, I think for me, I've always been inspired to be part of the labor movement on multiple fronts or on different levels because I truly believe in a class struggle, and I think we are at many pivotal moments as of right now. I think really we could either sink or swim from here. So there's a lot to be said. There's a lot that we could be discussing, and hopefully we can agitate and continue popularizing concepts in the labor movement and reaching our members and the working class in general. And yeah, that's a lot about why I'm here.
Well, I am so glad you're here, Mo, and joining CUPE Cast. And I'm also looking forward to the many topics and stories that we'll cover this year. I know you have a lot of great ideas and you have a lot of thoughts and opinions on different topics revolving around the labor movement. So I'm excited to have these conversations with you on this podcast.
Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, we had a jam-packed episode today. As we discuss the bargaining process, we hear from 2 CUPE local presidents. Last fall, municipal workers from the city of Toronto started the bargaining process with the city. This includes CUPE Local 416, 4948, and Local 79. From the date of this recording, Locals 49, 48, and 79 are still at the bargaining table with their employer.
So just to add on to what Mo has said, today we invited Brandon Haynes and Nas Yadollahi to CUPE Cast to speak about their campaign and how they're engaging with their members and the working class during this round of bargaining.
So I'm excited to hear from Brandon and Nas.
Me
Of
too.
course, we've been very familiar with both of them in the CUPE sphere or the CUPE world. And I hope our listeners can learn more about the issues that their members are facing and how it affects the residents of Toronto, the larger membership, and the labor movement. So first, you'll hear from Brandon, president of CUPE Local 4948, followed by Nas, president of CUPE Local 79, and we hope that you enjoy what they have to say.
Welcome, Brandon, to CUPE Cast. We are excited to have you here today to discuss your local's bargaining process. Happy New Year, by the way. And to start, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure, and thank you for the welcome and Happy New Year to you. My name is Brandon Haynes, and I am the president of the Toronto Public Library Workers Union. We are members of CUPE, and our local is 4948. And I've been working at the library since 2004, so it's been quite a while. And I've been involved in different roles in the union, but have been president since the very end of 2019 and slightly before the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been a kind of a wild ride as president, but enjoying the role and enjoying the work that I can try to do to represent the members.
Thanks, Brandon. So can you tell us what are some of the key issues that the members of your local are facing in the workplace? How are these issues affecting the broader Toronto residents? And if you can share the top two or three issues.
Sure. So I represent about 2,300 library workers at the Toronto Public Library. So we have a whole range of members in different roles, librarians. We have people that are truck drivers, clericals, members that work in IT, and the whole gamut of all the unionized staff at the library. And we are the busiest public library system in the world. We do get millions and millions of visits every year. And there was a little bit of a running joke when Taylor Swift was in Toronto, because if you look at the number of people that attended her concert every day, we do get more visits at the library per day than Taylor Swift attendees. It's about 34,000 people that use the 100 locations in the city of Toronto. So we're very popular, very important to the city. And of course, we are in bargaining right now. A couple of the issues that we are facing generally in our workplace is we are trying to be something for everybody. The library is the great equalizer, so to speak. It's a little bit of a morbid term to use, but we are a cradle to grave service. So people come to the library when they're like, not even able to take care of themselves. They come with their parents and they use the library for different reasons all the way up to their older age. And we support children, youth, seniors, newcomers, and the whole range of it. And it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your background is. We're open and accessible to everyone. But it does create some challenges in terms of trying to meet the demands of the Torontonians and the people that visit the libraries. So we do have an issue in terms of staffing, just trying to deal with the complex needs that people have, trying to redirect them to other services in the city, knowing that the library is, generally their first stop, and trying to help them as much as we can. Over the years, we actually have, experienced an increase in violence and harassment and other related incidents at the library. Libraries are generally safe, but they are open to everyone. And we've seen an increase in, harassment, threatening behavior, violence to the tune of a 71% increase from 2022 to 2023. And that was reported in the media recently. Another issue that we face is because of the decisions that are made by the Ford government in terms of closing things like safe consumption sites, people do rely on the library to use drugs and to have access to that. So there's been a 529% increase in overdoses that have happened in libraries, and we support the workers that provide that harm reduction service to people. We've stood in solidarity with other locals, such as Local 79, whose members help with that crisis that we're facing in the city, but it does trickle over into the library as well. And then aside from that, we're always resisting automation at the expense of human delivered services. We're not opposed to automation if it improves the services and it's a tool that the workers can use to help people better. But we vehemently oppose introducing things like staffless libraries where there's no staff present, and then people just come in and use the services without having any humans, because we don't believe that's a real library service. So those are just a couple of the issues that we're facing.
All right. Thanks for sharing. As you are aware that the Toronto City Council recently released a proposed budget for 2025. Can you just tell us some of your thoughts around that budget and whether it addressed some of the issues that you just mentioned earlier that your locals face, the members at your local face?
Sure. So we are happy now that we do have a progressive mayor at the helm of the city of Toronto. We've had negative experiences in the past. Some of you will remember when Rob Ford was the mayor of the
Hmm.
city. He hated libraries. He said that there were more libraries than Tim Hortons, which I think would be a good thing, but it's not factually true. And he was threatening basically to close down a huge number of libraries and lay off a whole bunch of library workers. And we were able to work with other unions, other locals of CUPE, community partners to oppose those cuts and kind of build our status in terms of standing up for our public library and the services that the workers provide. So under the leadership of Mayor Chow, it's a lot different. She is someone that supports libraries. She has a good relationship with our union as well. And so in terms of the budget that's proposed for next year, we are looking at a small increase to the budget, which is good compared to the cuts that we've had to fight off in previous years. And one of the major issues right now is that they're looking to just expand library service to be open on more days of the week and including Sunday, which we believe is a great thing. We would like to really get assurances of the staffing levels for those expanded hours. And we know that there is a plan to increase the number of staff. And our hope is that it will be adequate enough to kind of address some of the workload and burnout issues that our members have faced for all the different reasons I mentioned in terms of trying to be to provide more and more with not necessarily all of the resources that are required, staffing and otherwise. So there is a plan to open up more hours next year, which is great. We just hope that that's properly funded with staff. A lot of the issues as well just has to do with addressing like a backlog in terms of maintaining the library spaces. So as you can imagine, if they're so popular with all the foot traffic that comes in, there's a need to maintain them. There's a need to address renovations for people that have accessibility needs and just general good repair, state of good repair. So there is some money and put forward towards that and some multi-year plans that might address that. But generally, we're hoping the best for the budget. We're going to be getting involved in advocating for an increase to the library budget. And we know that there are still some councillors on city council that have no real concept of what libraries are or don't understand how much importance they have for people that need them the most. And we are continuing to tell the story of the library and the library workers. And libraries work because we do, and that's why we want to advocate for the workers, but also the services overall.
Right on. Okay, so now that we've discussed some of these issues, let's shift gears a little bit towards bargaining. Can you tell us where your local is at currently in the bargaining process?
Sure. So our current collective agreement expired December 31st of 2024. So we're looking to negotiate a new collective agreement. And we served notice to bargain at the end of November, and we spent quite a while preparing all of our bargaining proposals, as people that are listening will be familiar with. So far, we've had about 4 meetings with the employer, the Toronto Public Library, and we're looking to set the stage in this round of bargaining and kind of drive the bus, address all of the issues that have kind of not been addressed in previous rounds of bargaining. So, we're not looking to like just negotiate in a status quo environment. We're looking to make real gains, have meaningful conversations, and address the issues that have not been properly looked at. So definitely, hopeful in terms of the bargaining process. We have a lot of members that are actively engaged and a lot of different issues that will that will formulate what we focus on in bargaining.
So just to hold down on what you're going to focus on in bargaining, I know one of the key steps in the bargaining process is usually engaging your members via bargaining survey or town halls. So what are some of these key issues that are at the forefront in this round of bargaining?
Sure, yeah, and we did do all of those things in bargaining surveys, and we just had a town hall actually a couple days ago. So we're looking to continue to engage with the members and kind of look at their issues and kind of advocate for overall library services. So the first thing that people are always concerned about is just the general unaffordability that exists in Toronto and beyond, all over Ontario, obviously, and in the world. So we're looking to address some of those issues in terms of proper wages and benefits, particularly for our part-time members, because we do have a very high number of precariously employed part-time members. I think a lot of people assume that if you're working at the city or working at the library, you're doing generally well and you're getting paid generally well, which is true in many cases. But we do have a lot of members that are just earning barely above minimum wage, and those are the pages that kind of shelve the books and the materials at the end of the day and tidy up. And a lot of them historically were high school students, but now we're finding people that have degrees and older individuals as well that are looking to get full-time employment, but they're trapped in those part-time precarious jobs where they have very little access to benefits and all the things that you need for a livable workplace or livable job. Um, as I mentioned earlier, we do have an understaffing issue. We do have an issue with workplace violence and harassment that we're looking to address. And there are workload issues in terms of burnout and just trying to address all of the needs of the people that use libraries. I mentioned before that we have some equity needs in terms of part-time workers, and really we just want to have a supportive, healthy environment that will allow people to do their work with dignity and with respect. And we're looking to get a fair contract and address some of those key challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope that the best results do come out. So can you tell us a bit more about how your bargaining team and the local are engaging members in this round of bargaining?
Sure. So it was talked about a little bit earlier in terms of the general things that people will do and hopefully when they're preparing for bargaining and getting involved in the process. So we've done the typical things like the survey. We've done meetings with members. We've done some virtual and in-person meetings as well. But in this round of bargaining, what we've done that we've never done before is that we have a very strong mobilization committee that's going out and kind of organizing with the members, having one-on-one conversations with them. So it started off with two of our members, Emma and Christy. So if they're listening, I'll give them a bit of a shout out. And now we have Emma and Alice that are co-leading that team. And we've been going to all of the library locations. We have a petition that's kind of outlining some of the issues that we've heard from people that we're asking people to sign onto. And we plan to present that petition to the library board at the next board meeting that's coming up. And so far, we have about 2,300 members, and we've had about 1,600 individual one-on-one conversations in person with all of our members. And I think if my math is right, I think that's about almost 70% of our members that have been engaged. So this is a first for us. We're trying to do things differently. We know that people have been struggling for a long time and the expectations are very high. And we want people to understand that the collective bargaining agreement that we negotiate is theirs. They have ownership of it. They have direct input into their say. And the union is not just, some floating entity that exists in the ether. It's really all of us together collectively standing up, showing that we're willing to show solidarity and fight for what we deserve as library workers. So we're doing a lot of different things differently and trying to engage with everyone, both online and in person.
Okay. And then I guess final question for you is, how can the labor movement and the public support your bargaining campaign and the work that your members do?
Yeah, so we're starting our bargaining campaign mostly internally, and we will be turning it towards the public. So we've done a lot of videos that we're sharing on our social media platforms. So if you follow us at Local 4948 on most of the platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you'll see some of the videos that we've done. We film videos with the public talking about what the library means to them and what libraries do to support their lives. And we've also interviewed a number of our members in different roles who've kind of highlighted their work as well. So we're looking to put that together in terms of a bargaining campaign. And we do have a supporter database at ourpubliclibrary.to. If people go to that website, they can sign up to get updates on what's happening with not only with the library workers, but libraries in general. And we have a supporter database of over 35,000 people that have already signed up, but we're always looking to grow and get more support. And one of the key features of that supporter network that we have at ourpubliclibrary.to is that people can send a direct message to their local counselor, to the library board, and the mayor whenever there's an issue that we would like people to be engaged with. So we would send out like an email blast. You can edit it or you can fill out the form petition, and it makes it really easy to engage with your local counselor in Toronto. And even if you live outside of Toronto, you can still send a message to the library board for people that are listening that are from across the province. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Brandon. We really appreciate all that context, and we wish you and the local all the best in this round of bargaining. And hopefully things go over very well. Now, for our listeners, stay tuned because we will be back with Local 79's president, Nas Yadollahi, and her thoughts about bargaining. So we are back with Nas Yadollahi. Happy New Year, Nas, and welcome to the CUPE Cast. And earlier on the show, we had Brendan Haynes, who shared his thoughts about his locals bargaining with the city of Toronto. And we also wanted to hear from you and the bargaining of CUPE Local 79 with the city of Toronto. But before we get into that, would you be able to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi Mo, hi Brianna. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I've only ever experienced this podcast as somebody who's been listening, so it's nice to be actually in it. And yeah, about me. I'm a youth outreach worker. I started working for the City of Toronto in 1999, pre-amalgamation. I got started sort of involved in this sort of work in the anti-war movement in 2003, and got organized in labor when I had many years actually in the city. It was not something that I engaged with right away, and but once I got involved, I really got involved and served 2 years on the board at CUPE Ontario, and won the election to become president of Local 79. And I've been in office for a year now. So that's Cole's notes.
Thanks, Nas. And can you tell our listeners a little bit about the members at Local 79 and how these workers are keeping Toronto running?
Yeah, I thanks for asking that question, Brianna, because I think a lot of people don't actually know that we represent 30,000 City of Toronto inside workers, different than outside workers who are represented by Local 416. So we represent over 45 divisions in the City of Toronto. So everything from childcare, employment social services, Toronto Community Housing, Bridgepoint Hospital, recreation, water, bylaw officers, shelters, long-term cares. We have folks who are responsible for maintaining facilities. I mean, it's really endless. Like I'd have to go through, 45 divisions, and we have thousands of different job classifications. But by and large, we cover a lot across the city. Planners, permits. I mean, I think if you name it, we probably do it.
Thanks, Naz. Um, so can you tell us what are some of the key issues the members at your local are facing in the workplace? How are these issues affecting the broader Toronto residents? And if you can share the top 2 or 3 issues.
I can tell you the top two, three issues. I think that's probably a good starting point. Workers are overworked. They are underpaid, and a lot of them have been complaining about mismanagement. So, recruitment and retention is a direct result of wages not being competitive, and workplace morale is low, and which leads or mismanagement is responsible for the low workplace morale. And I mean, I think it's obvious, but people are overworked because of the recruitment and retention issue, right? So when you can't keep people and you can't recruit people, then the work does not go away. The work is still there. So you get other workers to carry the work of the workers that you can't recruit and retain. And so the overwork is really, really concerning, and we hear it across all of our divisions. And when you don't have staffing levels that allow you to maintain a high level of service, I mean, who does that ultimately impact? The people who rely on those services, right? So in our long-term care homes, for example, last year we had a vacancy rate of over 460. And instead of addressing that vacancy rate has now increased to over 500 vacancies.
Wow.
So when you have 500 vacant positions in long-term care homes, how are those who are looking for care getting the care that they deserve and they need? And it was very telling when a couple of residents contacted the Toronto Star recently, and there was an article about residents being worried and concerned about the level of care that they were receiving. And they were able to identify that it's because of staffing issues and staffing levels.
Thank you for sharing. I know that's very insightful, and it kind of gives a reality to how workers and issues workers are facing and how that impacts the residents of Toronto. So just want to shift gears a little bit. So as you are aware, the City of Toronto recently released a proposed 2025 budget. Can you tell us some of your thoughts around the budget and whether it addresses some of the issues the members at CUPE Local 79 face?
Yeah, I mean, the budget in it has increases in some staffing levels, right? So for shelters, for transportation services, they've invested $400 million in the maintenance of recreation facilities. I mean, the numbers, when someone looks at it, they're like, oh, well, these are not bad numbers. The city's investing, right? Last year, the city increased the number of positions in long-term care by 300, but they didn't fill them, right? So I liken it to somebody saying, okay, well, I need a stove. I need to be able to eat. And in order to be able to make food and eat, I need a stove. So, okay, you create a space for a stove in your home, but you don't actually put a stove there. You create space, but you actually don't put a stove there. So now you can't eat because you can't cook food because there's no stove. So what is the point of identifying and coming up with numbers if you're still going to have vacancies, right? So I often feel like these numbers are thrown out, but I think what might be more useful is to have a report card and say, what did you accomplish from the promises you made in the previous budget, right? Have you been able to address the issues that you were trying to address through this budget, this proposed budget, or this budget that was ultimately approved? And budgets that enhance services are developed because, especially with the rising cost of living and inflation, increasingly people are looking to our services to alleviate some of the stresses and the pressures that they're under, right? So affordable childcare, people who can process social service needs at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month, shelters. So, our shelter system is, overflowing and it's crowded and the housing crisis is obvious. So, people rely on the services that our members provide and deliver. We can't expect people to stick around and work for a corporation that doesn't value its workers by not paying them the wages that they need in order to be able to thrive, right? Our members have been, a lot of them are leaving the city because they can't afford to live in it. And in many instances, what they're doing for a living, they get paid more in other municipalities. So if you're living outside of the city and the municipality that you're living in is paying you more to do the work that you're doing, why would you want to work for an organization that undervalues your work and is too expensive to live in? And is in a city that's too expensive to live in, right? So um, our members are facing the same challenges that the vast majority of members of the public are facing. Rising cost of living, inflation, and that is compounded by years of wages that haven't kept up with any of that. So needless to say, we already talked about the retention and recruitment and the workplace morale issues and stuff. So, budgets, great. You're investing, fantastic. Let's actually see you do the work.
Those are some pretty good analogies, and it fits with the larger picture of what the residents of the city of Toronto are facing on multiple fronts. But can you tell us a bit more about where your local is currently in the bargaining process? I know folks um, can ostensibly or vaguely understand or see the bargaining process, but it's important for the listeners also to understand where they're at specifically and what they can look forward to.
Yeah. So actually, as we speak, our members are participating in a strike vote. And we filed for conciliation. I think this is a really important point in the bargaining process. This is when your membership tells you where their line in the sand is, right? We are, and we have, for the first time in Local 79's history, participated in an open bargaining scenario where our members have, full access to our proposals and they're being kept up to date. And so there isn't this, behind closed doors bargaining that's happening where we don't actually know the details of what's happening. I think that's really important, right? I think you can have a whole other podcast on that. And people have their own feelings about whether or not open bargaining is good or not good. I think that the people who are being impacted by something as significant as collective bargaining need to be a part of that process in a very, very real way. And so the feedback from the membership has been really great in terms of the fact that they're getting updates, the fact that they have access to this information in a very detailed way, which means that when you get to a point where you're taking a strike vote, people are not asking you, why are we, like, should I, they have all the information they need to decide whether or not they should be giving the mandate to their bargaining committee, should it be necessary, to call a strike. So conciliation is in advance of filing for mediation and a no board. So I think we still got some work ahead of us. And, ultimately, I think everybody's goal is to get a fair contract. How we arrive at a fair contract, yet to be determined.
That is true. And so now that you're starting the bargaining process and you're in the midst of it, can you tell us some of the key issues that are at the forefront of this round of bargaining? So what have your members told you, what they want to see in their next collective agreement?
I think it's worth mentioning that the last time we signed a deal, we signed a 5-year contract. In 2020, Local 79 signed a 5-year contract that saw members getting a raise of 1%, 1%, 1%, 1.25, and 1.75. Inflation has hovered anywhere between 2 and 7% during this time. So our members have actually been in the minus. If you go further back in previous rounds of bargaining prior to 2020, our numbers were not better. If not, they were worse. So naturally, when you have subsequent rounds of bargaining that has not resulted in appropriate increases, workers will start to feel the impacts of that. So not shockingly, wages is the number one priority, followed by benefits. You know, everything that you have to pay for now has increased in price. And so nobody wants to see any concessions to their benefits. Our members are rightfully asking for enhancement to their benefits. And people want to be shown the respect that they deserve in their workplaces. As I alluded to and talked about a little bit earlier, workplace morale is low. And people are tired of being overworked or doing the job of 2, 3 other people because the city can't hire and retain and folks. Like people are coming and they're leaving, right? So those have been those are the key issues at the bargaining table for sure.
So how are your bargaining team and the local engaging members in this round of bargaining? I mean, you've kind of outlined it a little earlier, but if you can go into a bit more depth of engaging a membership of such a large local at a crucial process.
Yeah, you know, when you actually don't realize the vastness of this local, I don't think, until you're actually sitting in this chair. Like 30,000 workers. We're larger than some provincial unions. It's the largest local union in the country. And I was shocked at how disengaged our membership was. And one of the commitments I made very early on was to shift that and create as much engagement opportunities for workers as possible. And I likened it to what I saw Local 79 as being it had like a triangular structure where there was a local executive that sat on the top, and there was, you know, some other elected folks in the middle, and even somewhere in the middle might have been the City of Toronto, the employer, and then at the very bottom of that triangle are the membership. And it's like everybody was telling the membership what they were going to do, how they were going to do it. And in my mind, unions should be an inverted triangle. At the very top of that triangle should be the membership. The membership should be communicating in ways that are made available to them by the elected folks, communicating to their leadership their will. And their leadership should execute the will of their membership, not the other way around. So I think we've actually done a really good job of, for the first time ever in Local 79 history, which is shocking in and of itself, we created an organizing committee that followed the organizing for power model to engage and organize the membership pre-bargaining, for bargaining, and beyond bargaining. It's not something that is going to be abandoned post-bargaining, but I think it's really important for workers to have control over their own working environments. And one of the best examples, and I want to give a shout out to our long-term care workers, especially from Kipling Acres Long-Term Care and Carefree Lodge. We have traditionally gone to the employer whenever there's been issues or concerns. We've gone to the employer and had, you know, conversations and said, hey, there's this issue. Let's talk about it. What can we do to fix it? And shockingly, most of the times, things are not remedied. You're met with responses like, yeah, we'll look into it. You know, yeah, we're concerned. We'll get back to you. Lo and behold, nothing gets done. So these workers at Kipling Acre were fed up, and they said, you know, the union keeps telling us that they're gonna fix it, that they're talking to the division, and we're just sick and tired. And actually, it was really concerning because some of our members were really on the brink, and you could really hear it in their voices. And we said, okay, let's organize. Again, shockingly, for the first time in Local 79's history, the workers organized an action outside of bargaining. So this is before we went into bargaining. The workers at this long-term care home came out. They were very vocal. They were very loud. They were unapologetic about their concerns. And they stood outside of their long-term care home and they demanded change. And change happened. Wouldn't you know it, that workers actually have power. And for years, these workers had been appealing to the employer, and the employer had done nothing. But once they took to the streets, and it was covered on a few news channels on the 6 o'clock news, all of a sudden things started to move. And I think this is what we miss in the labor movement often, is like we commit ourselves to some kind of political process that is really designed not to benefit workers. And we forget that there's this whole other thing that's called taking action. That is worker-led, that is inspired by workers, and workers determine their own outcomes in that way. It's super powerful. I think we need to do more of that. Like, I really think labor unions would benefit greatly by investing heavily in organizing, investing in the means that is necessary to actualize organizing in their unions. And I can imagine why they may not be as, interested in some of those things. But again, I think that's a whole other podcast. But yeah, and our members have been very, very happy about the opportunities for engagement and participation. Yeah, I think we should come back and have a whole other conversation about organizing, guys. What do you think?
I think so. It'll be a really great episode.
And Brianna's bargaining is also going to be starting, or have we already served notice to bargain with Toronto Community Housing and Toronto Senior Housing as well. So we're going to be in a year of rolling bargaining round, so it'll be fun.
Yes. Just to give a visual for our listeners, Nas is wearing 2 buttons and they say worth it. So Nas, I'm going to ask you if you could tell our listeners a little bit about Worth It campaign and its objective.
So again, groundbreaking should not be groundbreaking, but groundbreaking at Local 79 when we were thinking about, people are sick and tired of their working situations, and what kind of campaign would address that, right? And I was like, let's talk to the workers. Let's find out what message the workers want to send. So we created focus groups. We brought rank and file workers in, and they sat through, several rounds of conversations and discussions with our media relations firm. And Worth It was born out of conversations with our members. And, I think it encompasses a whole bunch of things. A lot of people feel very passionately about this city. They love the city of Toronto. A lot of people love the work that they do and the services that they deliver to the people of Toronto. And so when you actually really think about it, the people of Toronto are worth it. The people who deliver services are worth it. That's how Worth It came to life. And it makes me super happy to know that this is not something that I conjured up, but this is another reflection of our workers and how they see the city and how they see the residents of the city and how they see their own place and space in the city. And I don't know, I kind of like it. It's a little catchy. I don't know if you've seen our posters around the city. But I think it's also very real and it's very telling. And in the ad campaigns are all real life rank and file workers. They're not AI generated. You should have a podcast on AI. They're not AI generated. They're not actors, but like, and I think when you hear them, you really feel the realness of where they're coming from. So use rank and file workers, real humans with real stories. It works. It's impactful.
Now we got two suggestions for our episode list for this year. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So we really appreciate all the work that you've done and your team is doing right now. And obviously, between the local bargaining of 79 and of 49-48, there's a lot at stake for CUPE members, but not just CUPE members. I would say to the city of Toronto residents and the wider labor movement. So can you tell us a bit more on what can the public and the labor movement do to support your bargaining campaign and the work that your membership is doing?
Great question. And one of the things that I have reminded Local 79 workers is being the largest local union in the country should come with a real sense of responsibility. That whatever we bargain at this table should not only raise the bar, but it should set the tone for other unions across the country. And I want to say that I think that as labor organizations, we need to stop talking about ourselves as separate from other working class people who are not unionized. We should be fighting in our struggles together within the confines of our shared humanity, not what local union you're a part of, not who you're affiliated to or who you're not affiliated to. It really has to become a working class movement, one that is going to see difficulties in achieving the things that it wants to achieve, because remind me the last time anyone went to their oppressor and asked them to stop oppressing them and their oppressor said, okay, you know what, you're right, I'm going to stop oppressing you. People gain their freedoms through struggle. People attain victories through struggle. And I think remembering that should empower us to push through the moments that feel difficult and hard. And so I'd like to, with your permission, Mo, shift that question to how can working class people support your bargaining campaign? And I think when we frame things that way, this becomes a shared struggle. It's not just a bunch of CUPE workers who are, negotiating. We have over 12,000 workers who get paid minimum wage, right? And these are people who work and run multi-million-dollar facilities. They take care of your kids when they're in camp. They teach your kids how to swim, how to do things. They are there when kids need a place to go after schools, right? They run our community centers. They run hundreds of programmings. And I mean, how do we justify $17.20 an hour for anybody, not just for Local 79 workers, but for anybody when the cost of living is $26 an hour? Did I say that right? Yeah.
The living
Sorry.
costs, yeah.
When a living wage is $26 an hour. And I think I heard somewhere like a rental wage is like $36 an hour, right? You have to be making $36 an hour to be able to afford rent. Sorry, we've been having so many of these conversations that the semantics are all getting confused, but I'm glad you're all here to help out. And when you look at it that way, and consider that if you're a member of the public, we offer services that alleviate pressures that inflation and the cost of living are putting on people. I think now more than ever, it's important to support all public services because it is actually, can you imagine if these services that we provide were private? Can you imagine what that would look like? Like, look at the healthcare system, right? The more it's being privatized, the more inaccessible it's becoming. You know, how inaccessible are you going to make childcare? How inaccessible are you going to make community programs and services? So, I hope that to go back to your original question, I hope that the labor movement understands the significance of these negotiations and I'm certain because when the public has been surveyed, they value programs that the city offers highly. They highly value our programs. There's like 90% satisfaction rate. And so we need to keep those services and we need to enhance them and we need to increase them and we need to make them more accessible to more people. So I think people can just engage, show support to workers. We have 30,000 workers. Chances are they're your neighbor. Chances are you'll bump into them somewhere. They're helping alleviate congestion on the road as traffic agents. They are public health nurses. They are daycare workers. They are recreation workers. We are everywhere. I don't know what to liken us to. What else is everywhere?
Currently, snow.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? I was just thinking about that. I was like, look, we're like snow. We are everywhere. But we don't disappear. Snow goes away after winter. We do not. So I don't know. We'll find a metaphor for Local 79. I can't come up with something spicy right now.
I would say water.
I think y'all may have just found a new campaign slogan.
What is it?
The
Tell
one
me.
about snow. We're like
No,
snow,
it
but we
doesn't.
don't go away.
No, snow goes away. No, that doesn't work. I think. Sorry, Mo. I think Brianna's
On
water.
water, because water takes different forms. You can freeze it, turns into ice. Heat it up, it turns into air, like evaporation. But we need water to live, right? So if you think of yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and it flows everywhere.
There we go.
And we're the ones who filter your water. I don't know if you knew that, but we're the ones who make sure that your drinking water is safe. So, yeah. And to that, here's a sip of Toronto Local 79 clean water.
All right. Thank you, Nas, so much for taking the time to come out to CUPE Cast. I know you are super busy being at the bargaining table. We wish all the members at CUPE Local 79 the best in this round of bargaining. Now to our listeners, now that you heard from CUPE Local 4948 and CUPE Local 79 and hear their stories about being at the bargaining table, we will be back with our closing segment.
It was great to hear from these locals and to see the work that they are doing to create change for their members throughout the bargaining process and throughout the organizing as well. Brianna, is there anything that stood out to you from our interviews with Brandon and Nas?
For me, I'm going to start with Brandon. The analogy he used that his members service residents from like the cradle to the grave, like all stages of life their members serve. I think that really stood out to me is that like the clients that they end up serving could be as newborns to someone who's a senior as well. And just the importance of the library serving everyone throughout the different stages of their life. When it comes to the interview with Nas, I really liked how she framed like our struggle as a collective and focusing on, the struggle that we have that the members at Local 79 face is not only isolated to Local 79, it is a worker struggle and how we should start framing it that way and how we need to start, I guess, advocating as well, not only for our members, but also for the broader worker force. And how about you, Mo?
I think obviously the the range of workers that fall under the banners of both 49, 48, and 79
Yeah.
is really wide, and most people would be unfamiliar with uh, the locals or the unions that represent their municipal workers, right? And this could shape this could shape the future of the city in many ways. I mean, the health and safety and well-being of these workers is going to affect the services that are provided to the residents, but it's also going to signal to the city of Toronto, the municipality itself, what are we willing to tolerate and what are we not willing to tolerate,
Mm-hmm.
not just as workers, but as residents, as people of the city. So there's a lot that hinges on what's going to happen. Um, and obviously, during the bargaining process, things start playing out really fast by
Yeah.
the hour and by the minute. And um, so kudos to them for all of the organizing that they're doing and that they have done. And we'll be sure to include the articles and recent developments in the notes of this episode.
Yes, of course, because we know, like Mo said, things change at any given minute. Um, so if you would like to learn more about these locals and the bargaining process, I will also add a few more sources in our show notes. So this includes an article featured in the fall 2024 issue of Labor Action, which is published by Toronto and York Region Labor Council, and the December 2024 episode of Let's Talk show that featured Nas, and then the article that's in the Labor Action featured Brandon. So hopefully with our podcast and along with these other sources, it will continue to tell the stories of locals 49, 48, and 79, their challenges and where they want to go. So a question for you, Mo. You survived your first episode of CUPE Cast. How was it?
That was all right. Nothing too daunting. Wasn't as scary as I expected. I'm just playing. But it was good and it was really a learning process listening to both Brandon and Nas, and it's kind of exciting too, just imagining the different topics and the speakers that we'll hear from, in the near future and the far future as well.
Thanks, Mo. I'm really glad you're here. I'm really glad that you joined CUPE Cast, and I'm really excited for the future episodes that we're going to cover on this podcast. Now, just a few quick updates for our listeners before we close out. The first one is that CUPE Spring School is just around the corner. It is taking place from February 18th to the 23rd. So if your members from your local are interested, there's still time to register as long, of course, the courses are not full. And we hope to see you there.
Please follow or subscribe to the CUPE Cast, and if you listen to this podcast on Apple or Anchor, write a review, leave us a message, and let us know your thoughts about the episode. And please share the link with your friends or fellow members in your local. Our show notes have lots of information that you could be sharing with them as well. Thanks for listening, and as always, in solidarity.